Hey there, welcome back to... Hey there, and welcome back to Mr. Larry's Craft Show. I am Mr. Larry because I'm the only person here. I really appreciate you guys coming and joining me again. Every like, comment, subscription, share really means the world to me, and I really appreciate it. So keep doing that. Let's get into today's video. I was outside earlier playing with my flag, like you do. As I was recreating my finest choreography moments from college, it dawned on me that the front of my house is very plain. I've made a couple of changes to make it a little cuter in this neighborhood, which is full of cute houses. And one thing that I feel is missing is just a tad more color, just a tad more color. I've been watching a lot of Antiques Roadshows. I'm so sorry to the people of England for my behavior. I could just use a little bit more color out there, and I've wanted to put something in the window that would reflect some light, and of course that brought to mind stained glass. I don't have any kind of glass making experience, but luckily we can borrow from the rich history of stained glass, which has provided us with some alternatives that we can explore right at home. There are 3 things I'd like to share with you that will help us out in our journey through stained glass, starting with thing number 1. Stained glass has been with us for a very long time, with origins dating back to the ancient Roman Empire. Stained glass is glass that has been colored with metallic oxides through the glass making process, and different oxides result in different hues. Various pieces of differently colored glass are joined together with lead or other metals. By the 7th century, stained glass was being used to adorn the windows of abbeys, monasteries, and other religious spaces. Islamic innovations in the craft circa the 8th century impacted both the technical and creative aspects of the craft as a whole. By the 19th century, stained glass really took its footing in the United States as a modern phenomenon when it was reintroduced by designers like Frank Lloyd Wright and Louis Tiffany. Which brings us to thing number 2. Once the appeal of multicolored, translucent works of art caught on worldwide, it was only a matter of time until the practice was reinvented and re-explored. This introduced new ways of emulating stained glass through paints and dyes and plastics of all kinds. Let's try it in plastic. Let's make it with less weight. Let's make it more accessible to people like you and I who might also enjoy stained glass in our homes, but don't have the budget of our local cathedral. I remember growing up and seeing those little plastic sun catchers everywhere that kids would like paint in. Sun catchers are believed to have origins in Southwest American Indian culture. So I actually bought one today so we can try it out to see how they work. This is made by melting plastic. You actually heat this in the oven for a short amount of time, and then the plastic melts into this colored pane that then catches the light and shows the light through it. So, you know, it does its job. What I'd like to do is something that's a little bit more substantial, which brings us to thing number 3. I went to the store and looked for a frame that I could use to apply my glass painting on top of. And I thought this would be better than trying to frame my own piece of glass. A lot of people actually do this with plexi instead of glass because it is lighter weight and it's easier to deal with if you need to cut it or trim it at home. The craft store I visited has a pretty large selection of frames and a lot of options, and they're all on sale, so really there's a lot to choose from. I ultimately went with this option because it is gold and it is already prepared for hanging, and I like that it's tall and thin as opposed to a more squared shape. This is a Hudson 43 Montgomery frame. It fits up to 12 inches by 20 inches, and I think it's going to hang really nice in my front window. I am going to be borrowing from bits of designs that I've seen in thrift shops over the last few weeks with lots of geometric spaces. But you could certainly try something that's more ornate, that uses a lot more curved lines. They are more difficult to work with, but they certainly can be done. The other things that I'll need for my projects today are gallery glass window color. This is just a series of paints that are used to apply directly to glass and create a stained glass look. And then I'll be using this adhesive lead. This is instant lead. It's 36 feet of it in this package, which is more than I'll need for this project. And it is in small strips. So there are 5 strips all connected here. So they're quite thin. And then I can simply detach them from each other, stick them down, and then I'll use a soldering iron to mask all of the edges and to actually put that all together. I've never used one before, so I'm going to talk through that as I use it, just in case you are also seeking those instructions. But I don't believe it's going to be a big challenge. So what I'll do next is draw my pattern, and then we'll get started. I start with a simple pencil design. This one's just geometric. It consists of triangles and squares and rectangles, and then I ink it in with a Sharpie so that it's easier to see through the glass. I'll be choosing some spaces for these colors. I'll start with a rainbow, and then I'll probably just fan them out around the central design until it feels right to me. My glass is actually a double paned piece that opens up, so I'm going to place the lead lining and all of the paint in between the glass as opposed to the outside, which is typically what you would do. Make sure that you start with nice clean glass, and then you're ready to begin applying your lead lines. Quick update, it turns out I didn't need a soldering iron at all because this instant leading is, I don't think, lead at all, but it's made to give you the appearance of that lead. So you actually would use this simulated liquid leading instead to mask all of the joints where your lines connect, and it actually looks okay. I was a little disappointed when I found this out a bit ago, but now seeing the almost finished product, it looks great to me. So we'll take a look at that in just a few more minutes. So this instant leading is sort of this rubbery texture. It does cut pretty easily with a scissors, a little bit more difficulty with a knife, but that will come in handy in a moment. It doesn't feel incredibly adhesive. It feels more like it's clinging to the glass, but I think that what happens between now and the 4-week period during which it cures, it must have some kind of property that makes it cling to the glass even more. I just roll it down with my little acrylic roller to make sure that there aren't any air spaces in between the leading and the glass, and then I continue on with the design. For now, I'm simply going to be trimming the pieces to size as I go, and then we'll talk about the connections in a moment. Now that all my leading is in place, you can reposition it for some time after it's been placed down. It does lose some of its stickiness the more you reposition it, so be careful with that. But just make sure that it's all firmly adhered to the glass, or as firmly as it can be, before you begin painting. The painting part is a little tricky. The bottles for the paint have a really nice applicator tip, and what I found works best is if you place that tip directly into the corner of the leading lines and then pull out from there, you can get a really nice even coverage of the paint. You'll use the applicator tip or a toothpick or some sharp object to not only spread the paint around, but also to help you eliminate any air bubbles that might form. You must do this sort of quickly because once the glass paint begins to dry, it starts to change consistency, and changes to that start to look really bad on the glass. Be sure to work quickly and gingerly. This paint will settle out on its own a little bit, so as long as you can make sure that there's full coverage in the space and there aren't any air bubbles or gaps, you should be pretty good to go. I then use my finger to just wipe off any excess paint that may have gotten up onto the lead lining. My finger works great for this because I can also push paint back into the space it's meant to be with the edge. Just use a little bit of pressure and make sure that you're being very cautious if you use that method. Otherwise, you can clean up with a damp paper towel. The next part is applying the lead solder. Now the instructions for the lead lining tell you to solder the joints together as you would if this was actual lead. What they mean is solder with quotation marks, because they actually recommend using this liquid leading, which is just, I think, a gray version of the same glass paint or similar glass paint. But it does create those interesting and iconic joints that happen when you solder iron together. It doesn't dry quite to the same color that I'd like, but it does an okay job. While this all dries for the next 8 hours, we'll check in on our sun catcher, which I've just pulled out of the oven. So I need to express my complete surprise at how cute this turned out. I had no idea that these things were kind of cool. I got a little bit of ombre in there, you can see. And it was actually a lot more difficult to put the plastic pellets into the spaces that they go in than I thought. I ended up using a pair of tweezers and just followed the instructions on the package. So I think I've had a change of heart about these sun catchers. I kind of like this one and I might get some more. And the perfect complement for my new sun catcher, a new stained glass panel hanging in my front window. It's exactly what I wanted it to be. My only regret is that it's not twice the size. So that might be my future project. If you have thoughts about what we should do next time, comments, questions, or ideas, send those to me, please. And if you want to follow me on Facebook, you can find me at Mr. Larrie and also on Instagram. For me, this little project is just a reminder that it might be difficult to see the light at the end of this tunnel that we're all in together right now, but we are in it together. And as long as we stay safe and diligent and keep finding productive things to do, like crafting, maybe we can find something beautiful on the other side of all of this. See you next week. Bye. Thank you, computer. Please stop. Computer, stop. Computer, stop.